What's going on, guys? My name is Richard. Welcome back to the Stock Market Outlook video. As always, we'll talk through my trades from this past week as well as my current holdings. Then we'll check in on the price action of the major indexes, the leading stocks in the market, also cover how my previous watches performed over this past week, and then we'll also talk about sentiment from a few different sources and also the IBD Big Picture as well as the GMI signal from wishingupball.com. And then at the end of the video, we'll put all that information together and determine what the current trend of the market is. And then based off that trend, you can kind of decide for yourself how aggressive or defensive you want to be in the market next week. And this is quite a long video, so if you want to skip around using the timestamps below, feel free to do so. But let's jump right in with my current trades. So this week, I didn't do too much because I was already almost fully invested in my accounts. But overall, the big purchase that I made was to buy SE as it broke out of the short-term consolidation. And I actually made my first purchase a little bit early in the day before it actually broke above this level right here on this day at 162. And that's because it was showing a green dot and showing good RS and volume early in on the day. So I made my first purchase before the pivot, and I added twice more on this day to set up a full position in this leading stock. And so far it's acting well. It's up over 8.33% on the week. So I'm very happy with this position, and actually moved out and broke out into new all-time highs on that day. So next up, the other big mover from this week was FSLY, and we finally had that huge breakout from this consolidation, this 3-month consolidation, and I made some buys on this day due to the teal dot. Then I added on the actual true breakouts, and then I tried to add on this day as it was pulling back, but unfortunately I was stopped out, and then I added back to it on this day as well. So this is actually my largest position at this time, and it's about a 15% position of my portfolio. So I did want to talk about this day right here because I think I did make a slight error here. And these ads right here are very small. They're about kind of 1% of equity. So most of my cost basis is down here, and I want to keep it that way. So going intraday on this Thursday, let's talk about kind of what happened, and let me show you exactly what I did. So overall, I tried to add as it was pulling back just about kind of 1%. It was holding up really well early in the day. And I added, I think on this bar right here, that first kind of 10 a.m. 15-minute bar. Then it kind of decreased and fell back to this kind of short-term consolidation here. And I think this would have been a better place to add because I would have known whether I'm right or wrong very quickly. If it breaks through this bottom right here, I would have gone stopped out. But I think I added a little bit too early. And instead, I should have waited for a kind of 15-minute inside bar and up type move. That would have been a little bit more constructive. So it's acting really well, and I love this tight action on Friday. You can see it's really squeezing hard, and it looks like this could be the start of another major move. So that is FSLY, and my other major kind of moves for this week were in XP. So I did take some off on this breakout right here, and then additionally on this bar right here, and just about kind of 10%. Just kind of take some profits and let the rest, the core position, ride out for a longer move. And outside that, I didn't make any buys or sells. And let's kind of go through my current holdings. I'll give you kind of my thoughts on these stocks. So Beyond Meat is trending beautifully right at the upper Bollinger Band, showing a lot of power. I like this bar on Friday. You can see it moved down, but then recovered and closed right near the open. And overall, it doesn't seem like there's too much resistance between it and all-time highs. But I would expect that at some point it will consolidate a bit, pull back potentially to the 10 EMA before challenging these previous all-time highs. And next up, we've got XP, which I already talked about. Square is also trending really nicely right near the upper Bollinger Band right here, and it's at all-time highs. It's making new highs in both price and relative strength, so it's acting very well. The QQQ took out the resistance point, and we'll talk about the major indexes in just a bit. I did buy some TQQ on this Friday as it broke above the short-term resistance, but this is a smaller position because I'm focusing more on stocks at this moment. NEO is holding up very, very well after this big breakout, and I'm looking for it to push up once again and take out the highs at 22.59. CrowdStrike has been also just kind of going sideways while the overall market is ripping and most growth stocks are doing very well. But it's not really doing anything wrong, and hopefully it can really take out this downward trend line early next week and eventually break above the short-term pivot at 148.67. Tesla as well is setting up constructively, and you can see I've got a lot of alerts set here. Let me hide those just so we can see the price a little bit clearer. And I like how it's holding the 21 EMA. You can see it barely closed below it here, but it's holding that line now, and it could have a dot entry early next week. And I want to see it take out these pivots right here at 448.88, or potentially this downward trend line if we draw that right here. And you can see it was very close to taking it out on Friday, but still has a little bit of work to do. So that is Tesla. It looks pretty good. LVGO is also kind of struggling a little bit here, but it's right near all-time highs. It's not doing anything wrong, and this could break out very soon. And finally, we've got Zoom, which is really getting tight. You can see the Bollinger Band squeezing here, and it actually had a teal dot on Friday, so it looks very strong. And hopefully it can take out these highs at 529.74. So those are my holdings at this time. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or comments about my positions or trades. I'll be happy to answer what I can. So moving on, let's now talk about the price action of the major indexes and start with a day-by-day analysis of the QQQ. So overall, if we take a look at this week, you can see it was overall up. And on this Monday, you can see we had a nice gap up and a strong move up 2.13%. And then on Tuesday, we had a bit of a downside reversal, gapping, or not gapping, but moving down through the 21 EMA and 50 SMA. And the next day, I think, was really critical because this was an expectation breaker, a positive expectation breaker. And this was a really critical day because from this bar, the expectation is we move lower, but instead we gap up and have a strong close right near the top of the trading range, although it was on lower volume. So that kind of set the tone for the rest of the week, and we had another constructive day on Thursday and also on Friday, finishing right near the top of the trading range. And as I said on the TQQ, we took out this resistance, this pivot at 282.88. So I'd like to see us continue upwards and challenge these previous all-time highs. And overall, from this last bar, the expectation is we go sideways or higher. If we go to a weekly chart here, let's go right here to this tab and go to a weekly chart. You can see we had a very strong week of 4.16% with a weekly closing range of 99.3%, a daily closing range of 97.4%. And the expectation from this bar is we go sideways or higher, and we are in a clear stage 2 uptrend with price above the 10-week now, and also the upward trending 30-week SMA. So that's QQQ, and moving on to the SPY, let's go to a weekly bar. And overall, we had another strong performance of 3.9% with a weekly closing range of 96.1%, a daily closing range on Friday of 79.7%. And you can see it closed right near the top of the trading range. And the expectation from this bar is we go sideways or higher, and we are in a clear stage 2 uptrend with price above the 10-week and 30-week SMA. And next up, we've got the Russell 2000, which has been outperforming. And here we go, the IWM. And overall, we are up 6.44% on this index with a weekly closing range of 89.1% and a daily closing range on Friday of 46.8%. And I like this positive action. I like seeing the kind of rally spread out. And it's always good for growth stocks when the small caps are doing well and potentially leading. So overall, the expectation from this bar is we go sideways or higher, and we are in a clear stage 2 uptrend above the 10-week and also 30-week SMA, which is in an uptrend. So those are the three kind of major indexes that I kind of gauge the market from. And now let's talk about some others. So first, the Dow Jones, the DIA ETF. You can see we had another strong week of 3.3% with a nice weekly closing range and daily closing range as well. And this is also in a stage 2 uptrend. And next up, let's take a look at the FFTY, the Innovator IBD 50 ETF. And we had another strong performance here of 5.84% with a nice weekly closing range. And this is once again in a stage 2 uptrend. And next up, we've got the XLF, the financials, which also had a good week of 3.83% with a nice weekly closing range. You can see it just started a potential stage 2 uptrend, with this being the first week that the 30-week SMA is trending up. And you have price above the 10-week and rising 30-week, so it just started a stage 2 uptrend. And overall, it's good to see that all these indexes are starting their uptrends. Once again, that suggests that the rally isn't just concentrated in tech stocks. The overall market is doing well, which lifts all the stocks that we're focusing in on. So we've got gold here, GLD, and once again, this had a good week of 1.42% but it is below a downtrending 10-week moving average, but it is above a rising 30 weeks. So this is potentially a stage 1, stage 2 uptrend if it kind of breaks through this moving average here. And lastly, we've got the VIX, the volatility index, and overall we had a nice sign from this week, down 9.52%, and hopefully it continues to move down and challenges these lows right here. That would be good for trend followers. So that was a quick run through of the market indexes, and moving on to the potential true market leaders. You can see I've got 25 stocks in here, and let me just move myself real quick so you can see the bottom stocks on this list. And here we go. Let's go through each of these charts, and I'll kind of give you my quick take on all of them. And first things first, let's sort by that weekly change just to see how they performed. The top dog this week was Fastly. Then we've got the solar stocks, the solar leaders, SEDG and ENPH. And at the bottom, you can't see it, but we've got DKNG down 20.33% and TDOC down almost 2%. LVGO down there as well. Pins down just 1.32% and Zoom down slightly as well, and Crowd down as well. So starting from the top, we already talked about Fastly. So moving on, let's go to a main chart of SEDG. And overall, all these solar stocks have been trending beautifully right near the upper Bollinger Band and showing a lot of power with volume coming in. So these stocks will continue to do well, but there will likely be pullbacks to 21 EMA, the 10 EMA during this uptrend. So there will be chances to get into these strong performers. But overall, if you can get into a solar stock at this time, it's definitely a good thing to do. I think this is still the #1 industry group ranked by IBD. So next up, we've also got ENPH, which looks very similar. You can see you've got a teal dot and 21 EMA retake right near the 50 SMA. This would have been a great entry right here. And you can see it's up almost 50% from that point. And next up, we've got Beyond Meat, which is trending beautifully. We already talked about that when we went over my holdings. Peloton is very similar. It's trending really nicely. And this is a potential ascending base pattern, which is very, very strong. And I love how it's trending right near the upper Bollinger Band above the 21 EMA and 50 SMA. And check out how the 50 SMA has contained this entire move. And if you find yourself in a big winner and you're up 50, 60%, try to at least use the 50 SMA as your final stop for at least a portion of your portfolio or that position, because you might just kind of stay with that longer term trend and not be shaken out by those kind of daily fluctuations. So that is Peloton. And next up, we've got WKHS, which has pulled back to the 21 EMA, is consolidating nicely. And then you had a nice move on Friday, up 12.62%, taking out the highs of the previous days. So this would have been a really nice entry. You could have bought as it took out the pivot of this area right here at 25.41, or on the green dot setup after the nice kind of reversal pattern on Thursday. So that's acting well. And next up, we've got Roku, which is trending nicely and looks like it's going to just continue trending into all-time highs. We've also got Net here, which had a nice move on Friday. You can see it was up 6.77%. SQ, we already talked about, along with SE. TTD is trending really beautifully above the short-term consolidation, and you see a lot of days up in a row on higher volume, a good sign. But even in these strong stocks that are trending nicely, you got to be ready for pullbacks, even though they might be slight to the 10 EMA or 21 EMA. Just know that it's completely normal for stocks to rest before continuing up in a strong uptrend. You can see that back here. It was trending nicely, but there were down days and pullbacks near to the 21 EMA. Next up, we've got DDOG, which after the big uptrend is just kind of moving slowly upwards, and actually had a nice day on Friday, taking out the highs and making new highs on that day, along with the teal dot. Twilio as well had a nice gap up and then move up into all-time highs. HCNP is just kind of trending higher beautifully. Apps as well is moving higher above the 21 EMA. NVIDIA is moving up, although it did have a slight down day on Thursday and Friday. But overall, it will likely take out these all-time highs very soon. Tesla is setting up. Fiverr, I already made a video about this, which I posted today, so go ahead and check that out. It'll be linked above right now. AMD is pulling back to the 50 SMA, and you can see it is on slightly higher volume, so keep an eye on that. But overall, I expect this to be support right here, although you do want to get out if it hits your stop loss. CrowdStrike, we already talked about. Zoom, we already covered. Pins is trending nicely and flagging a little bit here, so you could buy it if it breaks above this pivot at 45.20 on higher volume. LVGO, we already covered, along with TDOC. And finally, we've got DKNG, which you can see move through the 21 EMA and looks like it might hit that 50 SMA. I think it had a share offering in here somewhere, but overall, it's pulling back and likely will find support right here. And you could buy it on a dot setup as it confirms that bounce off that key moving average. So that's a quick run through of the potential true market leaders. And if you have any suggestions on stocks I should add to this list, just let me know down below in the comment section. So that's kind of it for the leaders. And now let's move on to my weekly watch list. And let's sort this by the weekly chains and just see kind of the biggest movers for my universe list. And you can see, no surprise, you've got XP on there along with FSLY. DQ, another solar stock, is acting very, very well. And you've also got LMND, which is acting really well, moving up the right side of the space. And this is definitely an IPO that you should keep an eye on. Watch for a slight pullback or kind of consolidation pattern, and then a break above a short-term pivot or dot indicator, whatever kind of meets your setup criteria. We've also got Plug on here, which moved into all-time highs and is acting really, really well. And also NLS, which is moving up into all-time highs. And finally, NVCR, which was a pick a few weeks ago, which is trending beautifully right at the upper Bollinger Band and acting very, very strong with an up-down volume of 4.5, which is very, very high. So that's kind of a brief run through of the best performers for my universe list. And now let's focus on my weekly watch list. So we already covered FSLY, FSLY. So moving on, we've got ESTC, which also had a nice week, breaking into all-time highs. SQ trending very well. TSM breaking into new all-time highs as well. FLGT had a nice breakout on Monday, but then kind of consolidated. So it kind of formed another short-term pivot here at 47.16. So that could be an aggressive entry as it kind of builds out this handle right here. And that could offer an entry before it breaks out into all-time highs above 52.47. SE we already covered, and moving on, we've got Okta, which also broke out into all-time highs. SAM is trending higher and had a green dot on Wednesday. Tesla is still kind of forming this consolidation here. CrowdStrike we covered, Zoom we covered, LVGO we covered, and our worst performer down 4.6% is CELH, which is still finding support at the 50 SMA, but it's been very choppy in here, so be careful if you're trying to trade this. Although it did have really nice action on Friday, you can see that took out the low of the previous day, then rallied very strongly and closed right near the top of the trading range for a teal dot and reversal bar, which is a really strong indication that potentially the trend is changing. So you could look for fall through early next week and potentially have a green dot setup. So if this is a stock you're interested in, potentially you could use that as an entry signal. So overall, a pretty good performance from my watch list this week. You had FSLY up over 30%, and a bunch of them, SE, FLGT, TSM, SQ, and ESTC, up near 10% gainers. And overall, we were green on 9 out of the 13 stocks on my focus list. So I hope you guys found that helpful going over those charts, and make sure you guys tune in tomorrow for my next weekly watch list. So with that said, let's go on over to the sentiment indicators that I post on Twitter, these surveys, and you can see that we had a big jump this week up to 60.9% from 49.2%, which is a slight negative, although growth stocks are acting well, and we are just out of a correction. So all in all, I don't put too much weight into this big jump, and I don't think this is a negative. And moving on, we've also got the NAAIM Exposure Index, and you can see a slight uptick this week, which I don't take as too much of a negative as well, because obviously growth stocks and stocks in general are doing well. So it makes sense that hedge funds are kind of increasing their exposure. And also we've got the put call ratio, which is trending a little bit downward right now. This is completely normal. And finally, the bulls versus bears is trending up as well. So in terms of sentiment, completely normal, given that we are now back into an uptrend. And now let's take a look at the IBD Big Picture article. And overall, the headline is the NASDAQ leads stock market rally on new Trump stimulus offer. 3 top stocks form new bases. And overall, they talk about the potential new deal from President Trump and the resulting big increases in the indexes, the NASDAQ, S&P 500, and also the Russell 2000. They also talk about how the stock market rally continues, and this is now a 3-day win streak, and the NASDAQ is methodically advancing after the previous week's positive action. And you can see that the NASDAQ took the lead on Friday, which they take as a good sign, beating the other major stock indexes. And you can see they talk about the announced acquisition of Xilinx by AMD. So keep an eye on that. It could affect kind of AMD stock price, and that could be why it's falling a little bit. So just another thing to consider. And overall, you can see that we don't yet have a fall through day on the NASDAQ. And moving on, they've got some stocks to watch down here: Amazon, Netflix, and IRBT. So overall, good things from IBD, and they have a current outlook of a confirmed uptrend. And Friday's action was tech stocks lead, market advance. So moving on to the GMI signal, you can see it's turned green since the close on October 6th. So good things there. And you can see the GMI score is a 6 out of 6 on Thursday. And we just started a potential red, white, blue pattern on the QQQ. So overall, taking everything into account, my current view is we are once again in a confirmed uptrend with the leaders acting well and also the overall market indicators pointing to an uptrend as well. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed and found this useful. If you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below. It really does help me out and my channel. And of course, subscribe if you're new and looking forward to more videos just like this every single week. And with that, thanks so much for watching once again, and I'll see you guys in future videos.